One. Good morning, Rotarians, and welcome to our regular Wednesday morning meeting for the Rotary Club of Hudson. My name is, by the way, the date is November 6th, 2024. My name is Tom Tobin. I am the Sergeant of Arms, and I am pleased to be here and see all your faces this morning. It's a pretty good turnout. Very good. I want to, first of all, introduce a guest that I see with us this morning. Tom Fogel is with us, I think maybe for the first time. Tom, you out there? Yes. There he is. There he is. Look right past you. Everybody say hello to Tom. All right. Let's move on to the invocation by my illustrious father, Phil Tobin.
Morning, Rotarians. Good and loving God, our source of love and light. Thank you for bringing us together in the spirit of care and service above self. We join with over $1 million fellow Rotarians to provide service to others, promote integrity, advance world understanding, goodwill, peace. May we honor one another by keeping an open mind. May we voice our truth and listen with an open heart. May we discern our will to unite Rotary in its noble mission. We ask for your wisdom and grace. Use our talents for the betterment of others. Gratitude, we offer this prayer in your name. Amen.
Very good. And Dan Filburn is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the four-way test.
Let's say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, all the our four-way test. One, is it the truth? Two, is it fair to all concerned? Will agree with will and understanding. Or beneficial for all concerned.
Right, I think that's all I'm needed for. Please give an ovation for our great leader, Kelly Brennan.
Good morning. Announcements, I'm going to hold those till the end because we've got a bunch of stuff going on. First is Ed Sogan. Where's that at? Oh, there you are. I'm looking back there. Seeing on the green.
Our Santa on the Green is coming up 1 month and 1 day from today, December 7th. I've got the sign-up sheet. We're looking for volunteers that will spend 2 hours helping the families and Santa keep everything in order. We've got, once again, hot chocolate and candy canes for the kids as they come through. We have 2 head elves, David Basil and Ron Strobel. And they will be on duty for 3 hours. And again, they crack the whip, so everybody better behave themselves or you're getting coal in your stockings. We've got we'll pick up the equipment at the Scout headquarters on Friday, and then we bring them over to the Scout cabin so everything is set up and ready to rock and roll. We're looking forward to this year's event, and once again, the sign-up sheet will be coming around for the next couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Also, first Wednesday of the month, it is Fine Day. Get out your dollars, your $5, $10, maybe even $20. With that, Andy Morse. Good morning, Rotarians.
Thank you. So it is a fine, fine day today, isn't it? And more importantly, who said no? Who said no back there? I could have sworn I heard no. That's right. Put the hand up with a dollar. Put the hand up with a dollar in it. Okay. So first off, we start with pins. Pins. Okay. Who's missing a pin and who's missing their badge? Okay. Now, Marilyn, thank you for raising your hand because I was going to hit you anyway because you were going to run out to your car to go get your badge. So that doesn't count. And where's Kelly Brennan? Kelly Brennan, put your dollar up because you were trying to. Where is he at? Did he leave already? I think he is too. So Kelly Brennan, put your dollar up too because you were trying to sneak your pin on there at the last minute. Who else is missing their dollar? Okay. And then we have birthdays and anniversaries. So we need Gregory Box. See him here today. But I do see David Basil, November 22nd, and lo and behold, Kelly Brennan, also November 22nd. Hey Pat, are you helping collect money too? He owes you $2 now because of his birthday. Okay, so those David and Kelly, we got you there. And then for birthdays and anniversaries, oh dear, we got Andy Morse, November 1st, 35 years. Okay, there's $1 on that one. We got Rich Warfield, November 1st. Hey, same day as me, Rich, but you're only at 19 days. Okay. And then, 19 years. We then have Ron Strobel, also November 1st. I think somehow this is all screwed up. But anyway, 26 years. But Ron, you had 10 years prior to coming to Hudson, so that makes you 36. So you're the old guy. Well, allegedly. So Ron, that definitely qualifies as $1 there. James Yard, good old Jay, you got in there for 9 years. So thank goodness we're not charging you by the years. Matt LaFontaine, 9 years. Rel, oh my gosh, you snuck in there also with 7 years. Sue Carter's not here today. And that last but not least, Mr. Tobin with 30 years. So 30 years. All right. So everybody got their bucks up on that. We then have last in. Last in was really a tie this time. Okay, first of all, it's Rich Warfield basically every time anyway. Okay. But so Rich Warfield, you stick your buck up. But I think I saw Keith trying to sneak in at the tail end too. So we got a tie there between the two of you guys. And then before we get to the happy news, I do need to talk about, we've got one of our members who's been fighting. Okay. To me, is it fair and law concern? I don't think so. Was it beneficial? I don't think so. And so to David Basil, who is prominently displaying the scars of the fight, and we won't say how the other person. Exactly, the tree won. So that's $1 right there. Where's Patricia today? This is. Okay, she is blocking my street. Okay, and it's going to be down for a month. So, Mimi, you're sitting where Patricia should be. So it's $1. It's $1 to you. Okay, it's that simple. And then Ben, poor Ben, he was sitting in the back there thinking, I'm peaceful, but he was really, really reluctant to give change to Pat today. Sorry, Ben, it's time for you to stand up and give your buck and give your buck. You can't get away that easily. No. And then unfortunately, we need to, oh, before we do that, I'm sorry. Let's talk about happy news. Who's got some happy news going? All right, Mr. Warfield. You can do two, depending on how happy it is. Perfect. Grab the microphone then.
And then I want coach to pay $1 too, because he forgot to announce that the Hudson football team made the playoffs. Still forgot to say the playoffs. So, playoffs, practice, playoffs, who needs practice? Coach just informed me second round, but he was gonna get around to it, and gosh darn it, now I forgot what the other thing. Oh, Richie Warfield won $60 yesterday on the golf course, played real well on the south, thank you.
Well done, well done. Who else has got some happy news there? Oh, don't be shy. We need to know, we need to know. What's your happy news? Anybody? No more happy news, are you kidding me? Come on, Jim, you've almost got some happy news. All right,
Kind of a lame one, but I'm happy that the school district did our master facility plan 5 years ago, because I
oh,
think
hold on a second.
that's me, so that's a block.
Yeah, they got happy news and $1.
Because I was trying to do the research in my tax rate. I saw that. Happy news and good time.
It's a good time. Fantastic, thank you.
I give $10 earlier, so I'm gonna throw some happiness in there. We have an athlete in my family where there were a few freshmen that were actually invited to suit up with the JV and travel with the senior guys. Guess who that is? The kid in the booth, Lucas.
All right, Lucas. Thank you. Well, hold on a second, you gotta wait for Keith. Oh, sorry. And then Keith will bring you the phone.
This was actually last month, but it happened after my day last month, but me and my wife celebrated 25 years of marriage.
Fantastic.
Very proud of that, so.
I think I'll chip in $1 on that one anyway, Keith.
Oh,
But she would put up with you for 25 years.
It's
That's
amazing.
fantastic.
You know, our first anniversary, I went to the Football Hall of Fame with friends, so I'm lucky I made it to number 3.
Yeah, give the thing over there. Yeah.
Thank you.
No, I had to turn up his music.
$1 for each one of these things.
So he was just working on like turning this up and stuff. So
Okay.
yeah.
What you got, Jay?
All right. Some of you might remember Allie Yard. She was in service learning and she loved to speak before Rotary. She just got married 2 weeks ago. She graduated in nursing from Clemson, met a guy from Clemson. And my whole family moved to Greenville where he lives.
Fantastic.
So that's not good news. Is it?
Good enough. Thank you. So, when I was looking through the happy news, I was reading all of the news as fit to print, meaning the Hudson Hub Times, and scoured it, from cover to cover for the last 4 editions, including the obituaries. And the only thing I could come up with was, and this was not in the obituary, was the Hudson City Schools Foundation. So I'll wait for Mr. Ed Sogan. Yeah, well, but anyway, most excitingly, the Ed Sogan, beautiful picture of him in the Hudson Hub, in color, no less. And there he is with all of the rest of the inductees from the event. And I scoured carefully with a rotary pin on there, and I couldn't find it. I don't think I saw a rotary pin there. Okay, so that's fair. So again, I was thinking about what we've talked about in the, we've had this last month or so, a lot of different events coming up, between Halloween. I was going to talk about some of the races that we had, and the one I was thinking about was the one in Washington. Of course, everybody knows it's the 37th running was a victory there because Kenny did, he tripped last year and he didn't win. This year he did, but instead, I think I'm gonna go with one of my favorites. Okay, and that was a race that just took place. Anybody can tell me what this race is? There was a race between an old guy, 70 years old, was in his 70s, and a younger woman. Anybody can help me? Come on, guys. Can't somebody help me with this race? Huh? No. Come on. Okay, I've run it twice now. It's the New York Marathon. And in particular, what we're talking about is the race between Danielle Grimley and Mario Morlini. And those were the two who came in last. Okay? And Danielle Grimley crossed at 9:30 in 10 hours, 32 minutes and 7 seconds. And she, by the way, was on crutches, having screwed up her knee at mile 17 and running on crutches the last bit. And Mario Bellini, on the other hand, he beat her, okay? So with a time of only 10 hours, 1 minute and 47 seconds, he came in having completed his 37th marathon in New York. So there's still hope on these different races. And then again, there was another race yesterday, I think, too. So we need everybody to stand up, if you would, please. I need everybody to stand up. For those of you who have the walker, Ralph, you and Phil, you guys, you're accepted here. Everybody stand up. So I think we all know it was election day. So, and then it comes on the television and you can kind of see what happens. So who quit at watching at 8 o'clock? Or who didn't watch at all? Who didn't watch at all? Okay. You guys can sit down. Okay. Who quit by 8 o'clock? Who quit by 9 o'clock? Who quit by 10 o'clock? Okay, you guys can sit down. Okay. Who quit at 11 o'clock? Okay, you guys can sit down. Who quit? What comes after 11? Midnight. I gotta get out my cheat sheet here. Okay, who quit at midnight? Who quit at midnight? Oh, Mimi, you went to bed at midnight? Well, no wonder you're looking a little tired this morning. Okay, who stayed up till 1? What time did you get up again? 3. Okay, so stand back up again, Mimi. Okay. All right, so the 4 of you guys put $1 up in your hand there because obviously that was terrible. That was terrible. So, okay, and again, we don't need to worry about it too hard. So, finally, I think that pretty much covers it. Here's, I got one extra $1 up here, Pat, just because I'm sure I did something bad. Any other news that we've got out there? Going once? Going twice? Oh. Hey, guys.
Don't tell me we're at the moment. Mr. Morris, just stand right there. Let this audience see you. Pin a thin piece of metal with a sharp point at one end and a round head at the other. Pin. What do we think, guys? And surely I'll pay for this next month.
All right, here's $2 for trying to cheat.
Jim, you want to introduce our guest? Oh, Rich.
Thank you, Kelly. You say round head or big head, Andy?
I think he said round head.
I'm not passing this around because I think most everybody's filled it out, but if you didn't fill it out, you want to make a contribution, raise your hand and I'll bring it right to you. Once again, for the fall fundraiser, I'll beat that over. You need John? Once again, contribution of $100, roses, or popcorn. So the combination of those three, as long as it totals up to $100 profit for the club. And the final date for sign up will be November 17th, because they need the orders, that being Pat and people at Costco. And then delivery date will be December 3rd. So if you like, somebody might go to Florida or whatever, just let us know. And usually Maryland and I pick up flowers at Costco. We'll just plan on here December 4th, and I believe that's a Wednesday, Kelly.
Yep.
We'll bring everything in and we'll get that on the popcorn. 2 weeks, well, I'm gonna have it included by the 17th. So I think that's.
Well, keep in mind, all of this can be accomplished on our website. Just click the button. Popcorn is one button, flowers is another button. If you're buying 2 flowers, it'll tell you to put the quantity in there. And if you're just paying $100, you can do everything on the website.
And along the same lines, Evan, I spoke to him yesterday, said he's the only one that's paid on the website so far. But we did reach out to Marty, and we informed him that the kids or the parents could go on the website in order to, they're a big source of our contributions they used to come from them, but last year we didn't get much due to the sensitivity of how to pay for stuff. And last but not least, November 7th, I believe is Thursday, which will be tomorrow, the gala event for the District 6630, which I have to be at because I'm the treasurer. Checking people in will be in Falls area. I forget what location, do you remember that? Location. Right across from Rockies at the event center. It starts at 6, goes till 9. It's their annual gala. We have about 48 clubs, which Hudson morning and Hudson afternoon clubs are members of the District 6630. So I think sign up has come and gone, but you let me know, I can get you to pay at the door. $45 per person. Thanks.
Thank you, Rich. Well, a very energetic morning. I don't know how you get Andy to do that kind of a, I forgot, but I missed last month's Fine Days, so I didn't realize how much. And you know, this is the kickoff of our volunteer month, and that you're going to need that kind of energy to volunteer. So continue your work, and I must commend you on for today's speaker from the Salvation Army. Our bell ringing is almost filled out. We contributed like a week of bell ringing at Acme, so it's a great gesture on Rotary's part to contribute to that. And this morning we have Captain Bramwell Aplin, and he's relatively new to the Akron district. He comes from a family that's heavily involved in the Salvation Army, and his 6th generation, his family, be members. He's an alumni of Penn State University, the Nittany Lions. Tough weekend this weekend, but still talking about it. And their coach has got to go. Anyways, and Asbury University. His wife and himself entered the Salvation Army College for officer training in 2013. Graduated in 2015 with appointments to St. Croix. St. Croix. That'd be nice. Brockton, Massachusetts, Hartford, Connecticut, and Pittsburgh, PA. In June of 2024, they were appointed, or he was appointed the area coordinator for Summit County. And he's joined as a new resident of Summit County, his wife and his children, Eleanor and Gideon, and our beautiful state of Ohio. So without further ado, have a warm Rotarian welcome for Captain Bramwell Aplin. It took a while for you to get up.
Thank you. Now, let me ask, is anybody here familiar with a place called Oneonta, New York? Maybe a few people. It's not too far from Cooperstown, where the Baseball Hall of Fame is. But in the 1920s, there was a young mother with 6 kids who went to the Salvation Army for church and took her kids with her. One winter, she fell ill and passed away. One of the kids went to school, and when she came home from school, her father had taken the rest of the children away, and left her behind. That child went to the local Salvation Army where she went to church, told the Salvation Army officer, who then invited that child to live with her. Eventually, the father came back, but that little girl never forgot, and that was my great-grandmother. And that's why the Salvation Army is so important to my family. It's more than just a church, more than just a charity, more than anything. It's a place where we found love and security, and that has passed on from generation to generation. So the Salvation Army is something that is very important to me and something I'm very passionate about. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Salvation Army this morning. Hopefully that's okay. If I start to go too long, somebody give me a signal. Usually that's my wife. If I'm preaching, she'll stand in the back and she can give me a little signal if I'm going too far. So don't feel bad. I won't be offended if that happens. But in order to talk about the Salvation Army and where we are, we have to understand where we came from. Because if we don't understand where we've been, we can't understand where we're going in the future. So I want to start at the very beginning. And so I have my cheat sheet and notebook here. I don't have a multimedia presentation, and I did share this because it would distract me. It would throw me off. So forgive me for that. But in 1829 in London, England, anybody know what was going on in London, England about 1829? In 1829? Okay. You know the story better than me, then. That's great. So in 1829, we were talking about the Industrial Revolution over in London, England. It was a time where things were very dark. There was not a lot of hope unless you were part of the upper class, and a lot of people felt like they were being left behind. And at this time, a young man by the name of William Booth was born in Nottingham. So not in London, but in Nottingham, England, to a relatively affluent family where he and his parents and his siblings lived a pretty good life. Up until about 10 years later, where his father lost his job and the family was thrown into poverty. Because the family had no way to support themselves, his father booked him to be an apprentice in a pawnbroker's shop. And while he was there, starting at age 13, he saw how desperate people were throughout the community. Just to survive another day, they were selling every last possession they had. And for William Booth, that struck a chord. He saw the desperation of people and he wanted to do something. And around that same time, William Booth started going to the Methodist Church where he was saved. He became a Christian, and that became the focus of his life. And at an early age, he wrote in his journal, "God will have all there is of William Booth." So this led into William Booth becoming an adult. And when he could no longer find work in Nottingham as a pawnbroker, he went to London, where he decided he would try his luck there. He did find a job out there. But also around that same time in 1852, William Booth decided he was going to leave that behind and he was going to throw his lot in to become a full-time minister. He wanted to serve the Lord full-time. He didn't want to do the pawnbroking stuff anymore. So he did that. He also became engaged to a young woman named Catherine Mumford, who became Catherine Booth. Now, these two people as a couple are the foundation of the Salvation Army, because we talk about founders, and a lot of times William Booth gets all the credit for being the founder of the Salvation Army, but it would not have happened without his wife, who was just as important to the organization as he was. At this time, when William Booth became a full-time minister, Catherine Booth also started preaching, which in the mid to early 1800s was kind of a scandalous thing to have a woman preaching. But all records that are out there about Catherine Booth's preaching is she was actually better than her husband. And people many times wanted to go hear her more than they wanted to hear him. But a part of his ministry in the Methodist New Connection, it was a breakaway branch of the Free Methodist movement. They decided to make William Booth a circuit preacher, so he had to go to 3 or 4 different churches every Sunday to be their pastor. And he didn't like that because it took him away from what he was passionate about, and that was evangelism and preaching to people on the streets. That's what he wanted to be. That's what he wanted to do. So William Booth went to the Methodist New Connection, and he said, "Look, I really want you to take this circuit preaching away from me, and I want you to let me do full-time evangelism." And they said no. And they said to him, "Will you accept what we are asking you to do?" And his wife was sitting in the balcony, and she shouted from the balcony, "Never." He took that as his sign. He listened to his wife, smart thing to do, and they left. But at this point now, William and Catherine Booth have no job. So they decided that they were going to start their own ministry in London, England. And it started as a tent ministry. They set up a tent in a cemetery in the east part of London, and people would come and they would listen to him. The Salvation Army, the history of the Salvation Army says the official start of the movement was in front of a bar called the Blind Beggar, which you can go and there's a statue of William Booth in the front, and that's where he started his own solo ministry apart from the Methodist New Connection. So what they were finding as William and Catherine Booth were working on this new ministry was that a lot of the lower class people felt alienated at church. There were some churches in England at the time where, depending on how much money you had or you could donate, depended on where you could sit in the church, maybe it still happens some places, I don't know. But at the churches they were seeing in London at the time, they would actually set a screen up so that you didn't have to see the poor people in the back. And that struck a chord once again with William and Catherine Booth. They said, these people should not be hidden. These are our people. We are going to make these people the primary focus of what we are trying to do. So William and Catherine Booth started what they called the Christian Mission in London, England, where they were really focusing in on the lowest of the low that nobody else in society seemed to want to help. And there were a lot of those people. Now, as the Salvation Army was beginning, they were preaching some things that were different, not in terms of theology, but lifestyles for people. Catherine Booth herself grew up in a family with an alcoholic father who was very abusive. That had an impact on her. And she said, as a part of the Salvation Army, we are going to say to our members, we are not going to do alcohol, not because we think alcohol is a sin, but because we're afraid of what it's doing to the families. They were also seeing that there were a number of parents that were spending all the money they were making on alcohol so that their family had no food to eat. They were losing out on their place to live. So really it was coming out of a place of concern that they didn't want to do that. So, but because of that, there were a lot of people that were very against the Salvation Army because it was taking away their clientele. Instead of coming to the bar, they were going to church services. So in the very early parts of the Salvation Army, as the Salvation Army was out on the streets corners preaching and trying to tell people about a better way of life, there were other people that started calling themselves the Skeleton Army, which there's a whole lot of stuff on the Skeleton Army out there, where they would come with bricks and eggs and all kinds of things, rocks, and they would throw it at the Salvation Army as they were preaching. And it was not an uncommon thing, and I can say this was into, even my grandmother would tell me stories about when she would be out at open airs, where it was seen as a badge of honor when you would come home at the end of the night and your uniform was covered with either blood or eggs or whatever, because you were standing up for what was right. So it was not always a popular thing, but like I said, William and Catherine Booth, and then eventually their children, had a passion for people and the lowest of the low that needed their help. So early social services in the Salvation Army, one was called the Slum Sisters. And what the Slum Sisters were, it was the female members of the Salvation Army, 2 or 3 of them together would go and they would find these homes where it was mostly men who were severe alcoholics who were neglecting their family. They would go in, they would cook for the family, they would clean the house, they would make sure the children were taken care of, make sure that the wife, if there was one, felt supported, and make sure that their home at least was somewhat taken care of while the husband was being neglectful. That's what we have in our literature that it tells us. So that was one. Another was blanket rentals. And you might think, why were they renting blankets? Well, it wasn't the kind of thing where you paid and you never got your money back. But what they were finding is there were a lot of people who were just sleeping out on the streets with nothing. So one of the very first social services of the Salvation Army is William Booth found blankets, and he would give them to people, and then they would get their deposit back when they returned the blanket to make sure it was cleaned and longer for the next day. Another was this one always, I feel weird saying it, but they were coffin boxes for people to sleep in. And it was, we call them coffin boxes because they were individual boxes, not much bigger than a coffin, for the homeless to get off of the street, come into a warehouse that had these individual boxes, for people to sleep in at night so that they were out of the cold. And they had a little bit of private space. It doesn't look great in pictures, but the idea was right. Also soup kitchens. And another big one was the Salvation Army started a match factory in England at the time. And they called it Lights and Darkest England. And that's because match factories at the time used phosphate in the matches that caused something called phossy jaw for the people who worked at the factory. And eventually, because of the chemicals and all the times they were using it, their jaws would start to detach. And William Booth saw that. He said there's a better way of doing this. So he found a way to make matches without that and started his own match factory to get people out of that condition into something better. And that's really what the Salvation Army has always been about. It's about breaking a cycle and getting people into a better way of life. And that was what he was trying to do there. We became the Salvation Army from the Christian Mission in a newsletter. At the top of the newsletter, originally it said, the Christian Mission is a volunteer army. And William Booth was sitting there with a guy named George Scott Railton, who was one of his chief deputies, and his son, Bramwell. And Bramwell, which is where I got my name from, crossed out where it said volunteer. He said, I'm not a volunteer, I'm a regular. And William Booth took his pen and wrote salvation. So it said the Christian Mission is a Salvation Army. And from there on out, the name stuck, and we became the Salvation Army. And that was in 1878. In 1879, a young woman who was a part of the Salvation Army, her name was Eliza Shirley, she was 16 years old, and her parents told her they were moving from England to the United States. So she went to William Booth and she said, I want to take the Salvation Army with me. I don't want to leave the Salvation Army behind. And William Booth told her no. But she didn't take that. She went back 3 or 4 more times, asking again and again. And eventually he said, go ahead and try. And if you can make it work, I'll send people to help you. So at 16, by the time she landed in America, she was 17 years old in Philadelphia with her family. Eliza Shirley found an abandoned chair factory, commandeered it, took over, and started the work with the Salvation Army. And people were starting to come to the Salvation Army. They were starting to be saved. Word got back to William Booth, and so he sent George Scott Railton, his chief lieutenant, and 7 women over into New York, and eventually that spread. And that spread into the point where in 1884, the Salvation Army started in Akron, and that started our work here in Summit County. Now, there's hours of things I could talk about in the history of the Salvation Army, but that brings us to the start of the work in Summit County, which has been going on since 1884. Now we're in 134 countries, the Salvation Army is officially. Unofficially, we're in a few other countries. One story that I've always found interesting is that the Salvation Army operates a yogurt factory in North Korea. One of the only uniforms that's allowed to cross the DMZ is a Salvation Army uniform. They found that they had cows in North Korea that were producing milk, but they had no way to get it to all the people in the countryside. So the Salvation Army was approached through Switzerland to do something about that. And so the Salvation Army started a yogurt factory, which allowed that milk to be preserved a little bit longer and was able to then get out into the country where the people needed it. Now, we're not officially there. It's one of those things where we do it, but it's not recognized really by the government or anything else, but it does happen. But even here now, we're busy. We're busy here in Summit County. We have a great team here in Hudson that takes care of our service unit, where we don't have a physical building, but we have fantastic personnel volunteers who step up to help those that are in need here in Summit County with things like food, rental assistance, utility assistance. I think we can see more and more now every day that people are falling behind, not because they want to, the price of everything has gone so high. I think we've all felt the effect of inflation over the last few years. But we do things like childcare. We believe that if we want to break the cycle of poverty, it has to start with children when they're young. So we have a daycare facility It's really a preschool. It's not really a daycare. It's a preschool because children that go through our program, every single one who leaves when they go into kindergarten is 100%, has 100% readiness for kindergarten. They can read, they know sign language, they can write, all before they step into kindergarten through that program. We have an after-school program that we operate because we know that most of the time when children get in trouble, it's between when they get out of school and before their parents get home from work. They need a safe place to go where somebody is going to help get them prepared for the next day, and we're able to offer that at the Salvation Army. We have a shower program. You wouldn't believe how many people don't have the dignity of a shower in our communities. Homelessness, the unhoused, is becoming a bigger and bigger issue in all of our communities, not just Akron, not just Barberton, every community. We may not see it, but it's there. In the Salvation Army, we have a shower program, and we partner with a mobile shower bus to make sure that we can get to the people who need it and make sure they're fed while they're getting their shower at the same time. If we want people to be able to extend beyond their circumstances, we have to make sure they feel dignified in order to do that. So the Salvation Army tries to do that. Food insecurity is a huge issue that every community faces. And the Salvation Army in every community in Summit County is helping to fight food insecurity. Sometimes it's through vouchers to grocery stores or just us actually purchasing them a meal, or we do a daily feeding in Akron Monday through Friday. And we just got a mobile emergency response unit right before I arrived, which we're coming back up to Hudson. I think it's on the 17th. On the 17th, to take it so that the people here at the offices here can see what that is. But we do feeding out of that mobile unit as well. So where people can't come to us, we make sure that we can get to them if need be. People need clothing. People need food. People need a place to go. They need a place to call home. And the Salvation Army works every day to try and be that place for people. We truly, we are a church. I make no apologies about that. At the base of who we are, the Salvation Army is a church. Everything we do because we're motivated by the love of God to do it. There's no other reason. We do it for that reason. But we want every single person, regardless of whether or not they ever have any kind of relationship with the Lord, we're still going to help everybody without discrimination because we want every single person to feel dignified and loved with the interaction they have with the Salvation Army. Because if they don't feel it anywhere else, at our core, we want people to know that they are loved. There's a lot of things that have been said about the Salvation Army over the years. But what I always try and say to people is this. That who we are is we are about others. And I've talked about William Booth. And William Booth, when the first transatlantic cable or telegraphs came out, he wanted to send a message to all of his American officers. But it was very expensive to send a telegraph. So he could only afford to send one word. And that one word he sent in a telegraph, which they still have framed at our headquarters in New York, it simply says others, to remind us who we're working for every day. We're working to make sure that every single person in our communities knows that they have a home with the Salvation Army. I wanted to make sure I had time for questions. So that's the end of what I've written down. I could talk for about 4 more hours about any of this stuff if I had more time, but I do want to make sure I have questions. So does anyone have any questions about the Salvation Army or anything? I'm happy to field. I'll do my best to answer.
Several years ago, I went on a tour of the Salvation Army's hydroponics garden
Yes.
program in Akron.
Yes.
Is that still going, and how much food are you now producing out of those gardens?
Yeah, so I was just talking to somebody else about this morning. Unfortunately, that program is no longer operating, and one of the main reasons why it's not is because it was a warehouse that was kind of quickly retrofitted to do that. It really didn't, it wasn't built with the right ventilation for it. So as you can imagine, with all that water and moisture and mold that came from it, it became an issue. So unfortunately, that program was discontinued. I want to say it was about 2 years ago. They discontinued that program. I've asked a lot of questions about that, but really that's what I was told is if we were going to do it again, we would have to build a facility that was really built specifically for that to make sure that it can be done the right way. But it was a great program while it was operating. It was great for STEM programs with our preschool and with our after school, as well as local high schools would come over to it. But it was a great program. Unfortunately, that no longer operates here in Summit County. Thanks, Brian. You next.
Well, you know, I asked a question before we started this morning about various church buildings.
Yes.
The Salvation Army has in the area, in the Summit County area. You mentioned maybe 5 or 6, or probably more than that.
Yeah, so in Summit County, we have 2.
Okay.
So in Summit County, we have 1 in Akron. So where my office is, the 2nd floor is our church. And then we have 1 in Barberton as well. We have 4 or 5 in Cleveland, so not too far from here. There's 1 in Wadsworth, which is just outside of the county, as well as Canton, Massillon. I would say, so our region, we're in Northeast Ohio. That's what they call our division, all with military terms. And we probably have about 36 locations in Northeast Ohio, but here in Summit County specifically, we have 2, Akron and Barberton, are where we have physical church buildings. There will be times where we'll get invited to do things in other communities. Like I said, a big part of our history was kind of open air, outdoor church services. Anytime we have an opportunity to do that in other areas, we're happy to do that as well. But as far as physical buildings, we have 2 in Summit County. Yes, sir. Yes, so that's a great question. So if you didn't hear, if there were people online who didn't hear the question, it was where do we get our funding to be able to operate? So that's all local. All of our money comes locally through donors. We're getting ready. Tomorrow is the official launch of our Red Kettle campaign for the year. That's our biggest single fundraiser that we do, is the bell ringing with the buckets. We do have people that pledge monthly support. We do have some other donors that give throughout the year, but all of our funding comes locally. We're not funded at all by our regional or national headquarters. Every Salvation Army is funded locally. So all the money that's raised in Summit County stays in Summit County. That's how we support ourselves. Jim can tell you all about the good work happening specifically here in Hudson, and the money that they've been raising, and talking about taking the week here at the Acme for us to do the bell ringing. That's huge, because that means that we are able to continue to do more services here. And the better our campaign is every year, the better our fundraising, the more we're able to do. We talk about things like the hydroponics lab. That was only possible because the support of the community at the time was such that we could afford to try something new and different like that. So I always say to people, if you have the capability to help us out, we can be more creative with how we can help the community, because all of our funding does come locally. And without that local funding, we don't have the means to operate.
I have a very quick question, and it's
Yes.
church related.
Yes,
You mentioned you're a 6th generation
yes.
of your family that's involved with the Salvation Army. Did you have a formation process that you went through?
Formation process. So with the Salvation Army, for membership and all of that, so we do have junior members of the church. We call them junior soldiers. I was a junior soldier. There are classes that you take to become a junior soldier so that you understand what we believe, again, kind of at a very basic level. And I did go through that, and I have a daughter. That's at 7 years old. A child can become a junior member of the church. So next year, my daughter will take those classes as well. And then for adults as well, we have classes, because we have a few different levels of membership now. Not everybody who comes to the Salvation Army Church is an official member of the Salvation Army, which is completely fine. But we have 2 levels of membership. We have one which is called an adherent, and then we have one which is a soldier. Now, if you see somebody wearing a uniform like mine, but they have blue instead of red, that's a soldier. That's just a lay person in the church who's a full member of our church. And then the difference between an adherent and a soldier really has to do with alcohol and tobacco use. Those are the 2 biggest things. If you're a soldier or an officer, you abstain from alcohol and tobacco. But if you're an adherent, you're saying you want the Salvation Army to officially be your church, but you're not taking that extra step. And that's completely fine. We have a lot of adherent members of our church who still use alcohol, tobacco, whatever, and they're still a part. It's just if you want to take that extra step of not using those things, then you can become a soldier of the Salvation Army. I hope that answers your question.
Thanks for coming. Two questions. One is just a perspective on the international aspect, how big you are, how many countries
Yeah.
you're in. And secondly I don't know if I would like to call it competing effort, but there's a lot of organizations, churches, and other organizations that have similar goals. How do you work with those organizations? Does it sort of carve out itself? How does all that?
So we do partner with a lot of other organizations throughout Summit County. Like I said, one specifically, I talked about the mobile shower bus. So the shower bus is not the Salvation Army's. It belongs to a group called Forever Our Children, which is it's a faith-based group that raised the money to fund that. We go with them and we do the feeding while they're doing the mobile showers. But that's not unique. We partner with a lot of different churches and other organizations really whenever we can, because we do know that in every community, there's a finite amount of money that can be donated, right? At a certain point, everybody has a charity they like, but we're all trying to do similar work. So we do work together, and usually whoever is the most established will take the lead with the other organizations coming alongside to play a supportive role in that. And that's something that we've done for a very long time in the Salvation Army is work with other organizations to try and help as many people as we can. As far as the international aspect, like I said, we're in 134 countries. We do have an international headquarters, which is still in London. It's in the same spot where the original international headquarters was, although during the Blitz during World War II, the original building was bombed and destroyed. So they had to rebuild it. So it's a different building, but on the same spot, which we have officers who are kind of liaisons to all the different countries and regions. We have a national commander here in the United States in Washington who plays kind of a supportive role to make sure that all parts of the United States are sharing a similar message, and we make sure that we're all on mission together. But we're in the Eastern Territory here, so anywhere from Maine down to Delaware, over to Kentucky and Ohio, that's the Eastern Territory, with randomly Puerto Rico thrown in there. Puerto Rico is a part of our territory as well. I've gotten to go there a couple times. It's beautiful. Happy that's a part of our territory. In St. Croix, like you said, I got to serve there as well, which is great. But really, every country has to do its own thing, just based off of rules and laws. There are some laws restricting what the Salvation Army can and can't do in some countries. We're very lucky and fortunate here in the United States that we have as much freedom as we do to be able to do what we do. But we do stay in line as much as we can with what every country's individual rules for churches sometimes or social service organizations to operate. But it's the same army, the same uniform. I can go to any of those 134 countries, and if I'm wearing my uniform and walk into the Salvation Army, they're going to treat me like they have on my home. And I've experienced that myself. So I hope that answers your question somewhat.
They just attack onto the other areas of our charity that we actually interface with in Hudson here, the Hudson Ministerial Association. We actually meet with them. There are issues that Salvation Army might not have the budget for, but we team up with St. Vincent Paul, St. Mary's Church, and all. I mean, we just need to find more of those, like in Twinsburg and Macedonia. We don't have that kind of interfacing, and that really is what maximizes the efforts of the Salvation Army. And the other question I had, Cromwell, is I've been down to the Akron facility, and I've seen you have lockers for food and clothes. Maybe is there any way that we can volunteer down there? What are the other opportunities besides bell ringing?
Yeah, absolutely. But so we have in Akron, we have our main facility, which is where we do our daily feeding, we have the shower programs. We do have a lot of our social services out there, but we also have a separate building that is a food pantry in itself. We have the need is so great for food that really we can't house it in our one location in Akron. So we have a complete separate building for that. We certainly are always looking for volunteers, really for any of those things. And I do have some cards with me, so if anybody is interested in volunteering in Akron, at our facility there, or Barberton, or if they want to talk to you about how they can get more involved here, they can speak to you about Hudson. But yes, so we do have other opportunities for that. And just to go back to the partnership thing, and this can be my last thing if you're ready. Like I said, with the cost of living and how it's gone, it used to be 10 years ago, if somebody came in with a $200 electric bill, you weren't shocked, right? Now people are coming in with $1,200, $1,300, $1,400 electric bills that are past due. And we have to be able to partner with other organizations because that's the only way we'll be able to ensure that that bill is taken care of. But an important thing is that what we always try and do is make sure that they have a path for success moving forward. We don't just pay the bill and then say, good luck moving forward. We try and make sure that they're set up so that they can keep up with their payments moving forward so that they don't fall back into that same trap and they're coming back to us 6 months later with a shut-off notice for the same amount of money.
There, you could do honor. Oh. Okay, let's get to know your membership. Liz, are you able to talk online? Can she talk to us? Liz? Can Liz hear me? Liz, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Liz, can you hear us? And I'm looking around the room. I thought I saw him this morning. Mr. Swain, are you here today? There he is. Mr. Swain, you could just take a moment and tell the group something about you that the rest of us don't know. And if you could also come up, you are now entered into the raffle. He does. But there's an easy way to get there, huh? And this is yours. You get a free ticket to Rotary. You could win money. Cool. Just by standing up there and telling us something about yourself.
All right. How much time do I have?
All the time you need.
Well, I'd like to tell you about a kind of a life-changing experience that we had. Back in 1999, I came home from work one night, poured my wife a glass of wine, and said, "How'd you like to move to Tokyo?" After 30-some years with the same company and 7 moves, we had settled in Hudson. We've been in Hudson for 15 years. Life was good. Kids were gone. All our parents had passed away. Even the dog had died, and we were true empty nesters. My wife was very established in the church and community, and I walk in and say, "How'd you like to move to Tokyo?" We did, and we were there for 5 years, and it was an amazing experience. Before we left, the company sent us through a week as some consultant up in Minnesota to help see if we were psychologically fit for this type of experience. And somehow we passed that. And we met a couple that had gone through the same experience, met a Japanese family living in the US. And interestingly enough, when we came home, we had to go through cultural reentry counseling. And we really needed it because we had become, I mean, we got into the Japanese culture, we got into the language. We had local friends, good friends, still do. And when we came home, it's like we missed 5 years of being an American. We were out of the country during 9/11. And during the invasion of Iraq and all those kind of things, we weren't here. And so that was like almost a blank space because the Japanese media is totally objective. You might get 1 inch on what's going on in America, and the rest of it is more world and Japan oriented. So when we came home, we had to go back through this counseling. And I remember one of the things that the shrink told us was that, when you come home, you're going to have you will have had all these great experiences and you're going to want to talk about them. But you got to understand nobody cares. They said they're going to want to talk about the Browns game. And they're not even going to know what to ask you. So, if you want to talk about that experience, you've got to find others who have gone through something similar. And we did. And we've stayed in touch. And this is now 20 years after 20 years. We still stay in touch and have good friends who were expat couples over there with us. So anyway, just to cut it off, I know it's getting late, but that was our life-changing experience.
Thanks, Michael.
Did we what? Well, no, actually, we ended up at Zeppi's, and the waitress kept coming over and saying, "Are you all right? Are you all right?" Because my wife kept crying. But we were all right. Yeah. We had to clean out the whole house. We rented our house out. So when we came back, we moved back into the same home we had. And some of our stuff went on a container, went on a ship over to Tokyo. And the rest of it went into storage. And we used to come back. We'd get what they call home leave. And we'd come back, we'd be visiting neighbors, partying with neighbors like the 4th of July or something like that. And we'd sneak back through the backyards and look at the windows of our home. But
That'll
anyway,
get you in trouble.
Anyway, thanks.
Thank you. All right, some quick things. Again, Salvation Army, 11:23, then 12:09 through 12:13. If you're in the 8 o'clock slot, and I think there are 2 others that are. You need to either see Jim or Marilyn to get that changed. Or go on the Evite and correct your time. Veterans Day, there will be a ceremony at the cabin. The flag pole closest to the memorial. That's at 11 o'clock on the 10th. 11:11. Okay, St. on the Green, Bordeaux was December 7th. That's 9 to 3. All right. Rotabuck is $9 and $109 payout jackpot. And the number is 2800. 2800. Mike, look at that. Tell me. No one's racing up here to challenge us. See? You see how that works, guys? You guys are going to be begging to talk. Thank you, sir. I trust you. $9. You get the draw for the jackpot. I don't know if you're aware, last week we had a winner. So we had a lot of marbles. Black wants to keep. That's not going to do it. Okay. Useless but important facts. So I thought this is the Wednesday after an election. Why not find something about elections? Do we know why we vote on the Tuesday following the first Monday in November? Don't, neither did I. So the answer is from the agrarian makeup of the 19th century, although technically this was also done in George Washington. In the 1800s, most people were farmers. And so the farmers needed, sometimes it took them 2 days to get a polling location. So they couldn't do it over the weekend because they farm, and Sundays they went to church. They couldn't do it on a Monday, the polling location. They couldn't do it on a Wednesday because if you were a farmer and raised livestock, that's when you sold your livestock, was on Wednesdays. So that's how we ended up with Tuesdays. The first Tuesday after a Monday in November is when we select. And the only person, the only president, I should say, that we've elected to win all the electoral votes was George Washington. With one exception. There was a president, I can't, was now, who won all the electoral votes. There was an individual from New Hampshire who declined to electoral because he wanted George Washington to always have the only full election. And with that, we are now a little bit smarter. Everybody enjoy their Wednesdays, or Wednesday, enjoy the rest of the Wednesday, and have a good day.